A missing spy is in need of help. Let's talk Star Wars Resistance.
How you get so big getting hold of this kind?
Hello and welcome into my spoiler review of Star Wars Resistance, The Missing Agent. This will be a spoiler review for the show, as I said. In case for some reason you're worried about it, there will be no spoilers for The Rise of Skywalker, even though I've seen it. If some reason you haven't seen it but are watching Resistance, you have no fear. I will not be discussing the movie here, just for the record, but we will be discussing this week's episode. Now, we'll see how this review shakes out. It might end up being a little shorter than my reviews typically are, mostly because this seems to be part one of 2 episodes. The episode didn't really have a definitive conclusion, and I don't think it was supposed to. I think it's a continued story, and because of that, I don't really want to say too much, for fear of the story not going where I think it's going to go, based off of only seeing part of the story from the beginning. The opening of this episode was a little bit unique. We start with the new character, Norath, and his Rolly droid, and they are on the run on a planet trying to get away from a bounty hunter. Typically, the opening scene is with somebody we know. You might have thought that this would be Kaz receiving the signal, or maybe Kaz already en route to the planet, but instead we're actually starting with the new character we're going to meet. Just kind of mix up the format a little bit. It was a little bit refreshing. I liked that first scene. It felt almost like a Friday the 13th kind of a thing, like a guy running down the alley, somebody's chasing him, like trying to slice the door open while he's trying to hide the thing. Like, it was just a really good kind of different feel for the beginning of the episode. The whole episode didn't necessarily keep that feeling, but that's okay. I kind of liked it as this little mini movie before we get the episode as a whole. Now, the bounty hunter we got, I thought, was pretty awesome. I mean, he's got the classic cool bounty hunter armor, but then he himself is a very interesting character. You can see his face is really beaten up. He's been through a lot. I also like that he's kind of sassy. I mean, the Norath is like, I sent out a distress signal, and he's like, well, are you distressed? Like, he's kind of throwing it back. He's not really worried about anything or what's going on. He's literally just in this for the money. We'll see a little bit later in the episode that when he corners our heroes, that he doesn't care about the datapad. He doesn't really care about the conflict as a whole. He's not necessarily helping the First Order for ideological reasons. He just wants the money. He says, I want to help the guys that are winning. I want to be on the winning side right now. That's you. But he also doesn't seem to want to help them win. So he's a very apolitical bounty hunter out looking for very political prisoners. And he was just, the kind of rough and tumble bounty hunter type guy that you would expect to see. And he was pretty cool. On the Colossus, we see that Kaz gets the signal that this guy needs help. And at risk to the Colossus, he and CB and Yeager want to go down and investigate. Yeager wants to do this because he's like, well, we would want help if we sent out a signal, so we should go follow this signal. Of course, this brings up the giant bantha in the room, which is, where is Leia's signal? Because we've got to be past that point, and the show still hasn't addressed what's happened, because it's not that they've ignored Leia's call for help, it's that they seem to have not received it. And I'm very interested in seeing what goes down with that. Is kind of, sort of addressed-ish in Resistance Reborn, to avoid too many spoilers for that book. But, this is, at some point I really hope we do get that answer, and I suspect we will get that answer. It's just a little frustrating that we haven't gotten it yet, and we're being reminded that we haven't gotten it yet by all of this talk of distressed signals. Doza is really worried at this point. Usually, he's been a little bit more chill in the last couple episodes where we've seen him, but now he's really worried. As a point, I really think it's funny that he calls Kaz Kazuda. He uses his full name, where everyone else just calls him Kaz. It's just a character quirk that I kind of enjoy. Anyway, he's worried because he doesn't want to leave the Colossus exposed if the First Order shows up. And this, of course, is a seed dropped at the beginning of the episode for where the cliffhanger is going to be at the end of this one. I really liked seeing Kaz and Yeager on a mission together. I liked it when they were doing the combat flight training earlier in this season. I like seeing these two together. They're such a wonderful mentor-mentee pairing. I understand why they haven't really been together as much, because Yeager is kind of new second in command. He's management now. But I like that for this mission, he really wanted to get his hands dirty. This is about going out and helping the resistance and being with Kaz, and it was nice to see that as well. Of course, CB is around, and I like seeing Synara. Synara is so awesome, and anytime we get more time with Synara is just already on the list of like a favorite episode for the season. I really like Synara's line of like, you only bring me around when there's danger, or something to that effect. It was just funny. I'm still kind of hoping that we'll see a little something between Kaz and Synara before the series end. But I'm not set on it. I don't need it, but it would be nice. It'd be nice if something does eventually happen there. There is a little bit of a mystery in this episode, and it does flow pretty nicely. It's not like massive plot twists and turns. You can kind of get a feel for what's going to happen before it happens, but even though you kind of know what's going to happen, it still feels pretty satisfying. You have the merchant Leeks, who finds them and like tries to act like he's going to sell him something, or tries to buy the droid. I think it's interesting that he specifically tries to buy the droid. I think if he had bought the droid, maybe he would have been, I don't know, maybe he would have been less interested in turning them in. Maybe he still would have. He seems to think that that droid is a mark of somebody in the Resistance, because he really hones in on seeing CB when you bump into him for the first time. He uses the Roly droid as his signifier to his bounty hunter friend. And of course, the spy, Norath, has a Roly droid. So he's kind of aware of that. So they have their own little conversation and kind of move along. But then, of course, as it turns out, he is going to sell them out to the bounty hunter, and that's when you find out that he's actually kind of in league with the First Order. Again, it's not that he likes the First Order, he just really wants to get off-world, and so getting some money, selling them out to the bounty hunter, helps him, and that's kind of his game. So it's, there's a lot going on. I can get to that a little bit more in a second. They get to Norath's place. They find the door kind of opening and closing. It definitely feels like a trap, but they're worried. They have to go investigate. Synara is smart and is instantly aware that this is not the First Order's doing, because the First Order isn't present anywhere, and that's kind of what also sets Yeager on edge. What I like about this episode is it really balanced Kaz well, and I'm very certain several of you are going to disagree with me in my comments section, because you do every week, but that's fine. Kaz has his moment where he like falls over when he's trying to talk about how great of a spy he is. He's still klutzy, and he's always going to be klutzy because that's a character trait of his, but I like that he is also the one that finds the datapad, that he figures out that there's like a hollow hidden drawer that has the datapad in it, so he still has that balance of he's always going to be a klutz because that's who he is, but he is getting smarter, he is getting savvier. Even if he trips over a basket of fruit, he can still think like a spy, and I really liked that. CB gets the information, they hack into the datapad, and that's how they kind of figure out where things are going from here. Then we get into this fight scene, and the fight scene is where you figure out that the bounty hunter doesn't care about the datapad, but this fight was great because holy crap, Synara, like, she's so cool, she's so BA, like, she's just kicking this bounty hunter's butt. He's got this like giant axe and everything, and she's just like, nah man, I got him. And like, she even gets hit by the axe at one point, but still like manages to push him over the edge and make him run off. Like, she is just so totally awesome, and I'm here for more Synara on the screen at all times. Then our heroes go and pay a visit to Lychee. This was kind of an interesting sequence. I couldn't tell exactly what, I gotta be honest, I'm not sure what the tone they were going for was in the scene. So Kaz is trying to play bad cop, and ultimately at the end of the scene the point is that he's really bad at playing bad cop. He's trying to be intense. CB was like dragging her claw along the desk to make the absurd noise, which I actually thought was kind of cute. I liked how she was like, I am intimidating. And then Synara's like, please stop, this is just annoying, like, what are you doing? But like the way it was framed and the way like the lighting and the everything, it just felt like it was supposed to be a little bit more serious. Like, I think back to stuff in the Clone Wars where Anakin would just interrogate prisoners and like it was supposed to be this big scary thing. It felt like a little too serious for a joke, but a little bit too much of a joke to be like a character point of Kaz being too intense. So I'm usually pretty forgiving of the tonal shifts in the show because I love things that have tonal shifts. I love things that can be funny and then serious and then sad, and then like I know that drives a lot of people crazy, but that's one of my favorite things, and it's part of why I love Resistance so much. But the particular tonal shifts in that scene didn't necessarily land for me, I have to say. But I still kind of giggle just looking at CB like dragging her little claw. So like It didn't land, but it didn't crash either, I guess is how I would describe that sequence. And then ultimately, Yeager and Synara are much better at playing bad cop than Kaz is. Yeager gets information out of the guy by just threatening to steal his money, and then doesn't, because, you know, they're not the bad guys. And then Synara shoots his comlink so he can't warn the bounty hunter, and then they're off to the bounty hunter's ship. It was around here that I noticed the music was in this episode was fantastic, and I'm not musically inclined, so it's usually like if the music is really doing its job super well, I don't notice it because I'm just absorbing it as emotion. It's not like I don't, you know, I like music a lot, I'm just not trained in it, and it's not something that jumps out at me. But I really liked the track they were using when they were going to the bounty hunter ship. That felt like a reorchestration of some like really well-known sequel trilogy themes, and so I was really digging that. So it was kind of nice to like actually notice that for once. But I liked that point a lot. And then they get to the bounty hunter's ship. Kaz and Yeager kind of exploring around the ship in light of watching The Mandalorian. And if you haven't watched a lot of The Mandalorian, I won't say too much. But when they're on the Razor Crest, the Mandalorian's ship, it kind of looked like a similar inside. It's not a similar ship at all on the exterior, but just like walking around the hold there just kind of gave me flashbacks to the show's live action kind of counterpart right now. And in there they find Norath, and then that's where they find that once again the bounty hunter has laid a trap for them, this time where he doesn't have to fight. They're locked up in the back. He fires up the ship and gets ready to leave, but first he talks to Pyre, and he's like, Pyre, I caught even more resistance people. Come meet me out here. And I want my fee. And he doesn't even realize what he caught because he told Pyre that he's got somebody named Kaz. Pyre is instantly like, oh, we found some Colossus people, and he's going to be there. He certainly doesn't want to tell the bounty hunter that because then the bounty hunter might raise his price, and that would be bad. But now the stakes are higher because it's not just that the First Order is coming, it's that Pyre's coming, and Pyre knows Kaz, which means they're in trouble because now this is about to become very personal. Here the spy, Norath, kind of tells us something we'd kind of heard before. It was really just Synara's speculation. Again, she's really good at picking up on what's really going on. But he spells it out that he's been tracking First Order materials. This is interesting because, again, we have to be at least in the middle of The Last Jedi, but we really have to be after The Last Jedi now. And here we have an embedded Resistance spy, and I wonder if he's been so embedded that he's not even aware of the Battle of Crate, if he's not aware of Starkiller, like, is he not aware of what's going on in the Greater Resistance? And I don't mean that as a plot hole, I just mean I'm very genuinely curious about what's going on in the galaxy at large, and I hope we get answers on that at some point, even if it's not in the show, in a comic or something I would love to see. But that was just kind of an odd observation that he's in the Resistance, but right now, in theory, the Resistance is all about finding more people, and so I'm kind of curious to see how these type of things go. The ship takes off, and once again, Kaz is the one that kind of figures out how to get them out of their situation. So they're still providing him competent moments, even though he is also very regularly the comic relief within the show. And he figures out that, you know, you can just open this panel and freak out the ship and the ship's gonna crash. Yeager has his line of, like, if Kaz can do anything, it's crash this ship. It makes me think back to season 1. He said something similar, like, Kaz, if you can do anything, I believe you can sink the Colossus, or something to that effect. So it's kind of a reuse of that line, but it's still just kind of funny that Yeager likes to pick on Kaz for his own klutziness. But I still just like seeing Kaz come up with these ideas. He and Norath figure out how to crash the ship. CB is plugged into the ship, and she starts to get shocked, and she doesn't immediately let go. I couldn't tell if she was bravely hanging on to intentionally do what she was doing, or if she was just trapped in the electric current and couldn't get out. I was a little bit confused. Not that I don't know that it fundamentally matters to the overall episode, but either way, she was kind of locked in, couldn't get out. But unfortunately for her, it was very fortuitous because that's why the ship ultimately crashes, at least as near as I can tell. She's the reason why the engines overload. Ship crashes, and then they get in this really big fight with Bounty Hunter, and I loved this fight. I was actually really nervous, because we're in the final season, I don't know what's going to happen. I was really nervous for Yeager in this fight, because he's just taking this guy on. Synara shows up. Synara is awesome. Kaz, even though he's not, like, I mean, in space, he's really good, combat-wise, but on the ground, not necessarily. But even he's able to get the jump on the Bounty Hunter and, like, knock his blaster away, and I was really impressed with that. Yeager and Synara are keeping him busy while Kaz and Norath get away, so they can conceivably call Captain Doza. I was kind of wondering why they weren't calling Captain Doza earlier. I can only assume that only Yeager has a comm link, because that would make sense, and that you just can't probably there was a communication blackout in the back of the ship, because I don't know why he would just let them have, I don't know why the bounty hunter would just let them have their comm link. So that was a little bit plot conveniency also, but it wasn't enough to kind of take away from the episode for me. They get away, and we don't really know what's happened with our other characters right now. Synara and Yeager are by the bounty hunter when he kind of like slams like Thor slams his axe into the ground, and there's an explosion. The last thing we see of CB is she's kind of like doubled over on the ground, so they're kind of all in trouble. Kaz and North get away. They call Doza like, hey, we need a ride. We gotta hurry, the First Order's coming. And he's like, nope, First Order's already here. Uh-oh. And that's the cliffhanger they leave us at. I really do like Kaz and Norath together. I think they're a fun duo. Norath is... he just reminded me a lot of Kaz. Like, he wasn't maybe as klutzy, but he had like a similar sense of humor. He had similar responses. Kaz is like, this day keeps getting worse, and Norath says something to the effect of, I was just about to say the same thing. So I really liked their dynamic. Like, it's almost like Norath is Kaz, but in a couple of years, with a couple more years under his belt with the Resistance. And so seeing them together is really cool, and I'm hoping Norath, I mean, I'm assuming we're going to see more of him next week. But it would be kind of fun to see a, like, Kaz hanging out with an evolved form of Kaz. And so that was something that I was really digging in this episode. But that's really what I have to say. Like I said, I'm sure there's more to talk about. There's probably more connections. I may address this episode a little bit more next week when we get part 2, but it left off at a cliffhanger, and I don't really know how to talk about like the overall structure of the episode until we see the end. So I'm going to wait until we see the end. I know I was a little bit more critical on this episode than I usually am. I still enjoyed myself. Typically with 2-part episodes, what kind of happens is they put all of the exposition and setup in the first half, and then like the second half is just start to finish, like go, 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 and is like one of the best episodes ever. So I'm kind of just assuming that this is going to be the chill episode. And not, I mean, it had 2 really cool fights, so it's not that chill. But like the more expository episode before what will probably be a really fantastic episode next week, and I'm really pumped for that. But that's really what I have to say about this one. Let me know what you think. Please leave me a comment below. If you're not already, follow us on all the socials. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.